Hello all. This is Ahron Wohlgelernter, and I'm here today with my co-host, Rabbi Wohlgelernter, aka The Father. And this is Around the Shabbos Table. Around the Shabbos Table podcast was created to bring you our thoughtful conversations on a wide range of topics that a Jew encounters throughout his or her life. Our dream is to share some of our joy of being a Jew by breaking open some of these ideas and showing the beauty and relevancy that are sometimes hidden behind them. Don't be fooled by the name. Shabbos was not desecrated in any way, shape, or form in the production of this show. This podcast is part of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network, a growing network of the greatest Jewish podcast content trying to make Judaism more intentional. Now, let's get around the Shabbos table.
You know, I saw something amazing today. You and I have been talking throughout the day of, tonight's podcast. And just a few minutes ago, I saw a thing come in about...
We try not to have a podcast before the podcast. That's our main goal. Our main goal is that this should be...
One podcast a day.
One podcast a day. It shouldn't, because otherwise we're like always walking around with these like recorded things. Okay, go. Let's go live.
Right. But I saw that Lakewood is paring down they're not having the yeshiva's not having a Mitzvah the first time in like 80 years. All good decisions, and that's not our position tonight to debate that, but a good position. And we know around the world that everybody is doing something different this Purim. We remember what happened last Purim, and it's we have to shape things in a different way, and that's all healthy and good. There's nothing wrong with that.
In the U.S., it was a bit behind us.
Yeah, a bit behind us. We're
so in Israel, it was like, it's already like the yard site already. It's already the year, because Purim was just the moment where I remember on Purim, like giving like these kinds of handshakes.
Right.
That was already like on Purim. But I remember the U.S. being like, 3 or 4 weeks behind us. So I don't know if people, not everyone had that experience. It was like, oh, this is like the anniversary of being pared down.
Right.
But,
and even last year, you talk about being pared down. We didn't really pare down much. We were aware of it, and we knew that we were getting into something, but we weren't so fully aware of what it was. And now we know what it is, and therefore, just in general, we take certain precautions, and we're careful, and we're going to continue that over Purim, and it's going to have an effect on the way that we celebrate Purim. But no way does it have to have an effect on what the essence of Purim is. I just remember back to 1991, and I think I got my years right, and it was the Scud War, the Gulf War, and it was a rough 40 some odd days. I remember, I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but Zadie, my father, Devora was living here, and she had all these little kids, and she was an Aryeh was in Miluim, so he wasn't home, and every time one of these things went off, they had to go into the Cheder Atum, they had to go into this to this room, put on their gas masks, shut the door. I mean, it's like a big hasten. She had kids, and she had to bring them into the Cheder Atum and wake up all these kids. And it was really a big deal. And my father, who was not a traveler, and he wasn't one of these get on a plane and go kind of guys. He did it one other time for his brother Shiva when he lost a daughter, but it wasn't that wasn't his MO. He got on a plane, told the school he's taking off. He got on a plane and he came to Eretz Yisrael. And he was there in the house and just helped my sister, another pair of hands, help her take care of the kids. And he just stayed in the house. I mean, he was just there for them. And it was just an absolutely incredible thing. And I remember people coming to me before Purim saying that we have to cancel the Purim Suda. In the shul we had a very, very big Suda, and it was a big communal thing. And we have to cancel the Purim Suda. It's just not appropriate. And it wasn't the only time that I had heard that over the years. But I remember it was a very big thing that we really shouldn't be having it. And it was some very strong and very powerful, influential people and smart people, not silly people, but just felt we shouldn't have it. And I all along was saying that no fakert, this year we need to have it because the message of Purim is a message that we must hold on to. That in the darkness, in the Hester, we get to see the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it was just something we needed to see. Well, it happens to be that the war ended on Purim Day. And I remember that Purim was mamish like it was the Scud Purim. It was amazing that we didn't just talk about Purim. We didn't just talk in a theoretical way about Vertlach, about Purim. You lived through, your mamish saw the message of Purim with your own eyes. And I just feel like this year, we have to get back to the message of Purim and recognize that there is a lot of pain around us. There's a lot of people that have gone through a lot of really, really difficult things and continue to go through difficult things in every city, in every place. Whatever place you're connected to, there are people that are experiencing great difficulties. In your own family, we've had it, but it's people experiencing all around us.
But it's also like political unrest, meaning the world, the U.S., that things are a changing.
Things are a changing, and there's a lot of clouds in the sky, but that only brings us back, some 2,000 years to the original Purim, and there were plenty of clouds in the sky. And you just look back and sort of go through the story, go through the events of Purim and understand what they had to go through and what they had to do in order to be able to achieve the things that they achieved. And we have a great model of what we have to do on Purim. It's an Avodah Purim. It's not, they have this song, Chag Purim, Chag Gadol, and I don't know what they say.
It's LaYudim, right? It's LaYudim, right?
Right.
It's LaYuladim?
Everybody says LaYuladim, but that's the whole perversion of Purim, that it becomes.
Interesting. I always thought it was Chag Gadol LaYehudim.
Because I pushed that with you. Because I learned it as a child as LaYuladim, that it was a kid's holiday. And it makes me absolutely crazy. It's not a kid's, it's a Tifa holiday. It's two Tifa kids.
It's two T for us.
It's like Bugs Bunny, lahavdil. Bugs Bunny, my father used to tell me, this is not for kids. The messages that were embedded, my father used to tell me
fascinating.
The message that were embedded in him. It says, it looks like a kid's cartoon, but there are messages here. Look, it's the same with...
Lahavdil you on Bugs Bunny is like Shrek. Lahavdil to Bugs Bunny.
Right.
Shrek is not for kids, but I hear Purim's not like that. Purim always speaks to me because there's something so nistar about Purim that, I think the Medrash Chazal say that the only Yom Tif that'll be Lasid Lavo is Purim. Boom, you're finished. I don't understand anything. No Rosh Hashanah, no Yom Kippur. Like we talk about, every Rav talks about the whole time. This is the Yom Tif, and this is the most important thing. And all of a sudden, boom, you get this bombshell saying, no, Purim is in essence. Does it mean it's the most important? Okay, it needs to break it open. But what that mimer tells me is that it is deeper and more important than Chag Gadol LaYiladim. That
is correct. Absolutely correct. And that's I think what it's worthwhile to spend a couple of minutes on, trying to unpackage that and break it open a little bit of what exactly is Purim. What should we be focusing on Purim? And even if I ended up having to have Purim on my own, I mean, literally, let's say a person has Purim on their own, can they achieve the Avodah of Purim and achieve the Simcha of Purim? Is that possible to achieve on your own? And obviously, I believe it would be an incredible amount of work. I've never had to do it, but it's possible to get there.
Okay, let's take a break for a second. We'll get right back to this. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdown here in Israel, Pesach totally caught us off guard. We didn't know how we were going to do shopping because of the lockdown, and worse, there was a serious egg shortage in the country. So this year, in order not to spend those precious pre-Chag hours online at the supermarket waiting for 12 eggs, we're going to buy early, like now. I'm already stuffing my kids' pockets with eggs every time we go to the supermarket. This allows me to spend more time before Yom Tov, focusing on the essence of the holiday. The point is that Pesach is coming, and we have to take care of food prep so we can spend time preparing and focusing on the important parts of Yom Tov. Pesach Gourmet makes this possible. This year, they're offering incredible catering services for fresh delivery in Orlando and special FedEx deliveries to anywhere in the U.S. So if you want to enjoy time with your family and not compromise on the quality of food, then go check out PesachGourmet.com. I'll put the link in the show notes for an easy and awesome way to order food for Pesach. And for listeners of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network, Pesach Gourmet is offering $200 off your order when you use promo code IJPN200 at checkout. So again, prepare for Pesach. Order now at PesachGourmet.com and use promo code IJPN, that's all capitals, IJPN200 for $200 off your order. Now back to the show. Before we get to Purim in particular, this idea of Purim, I want to just, that story that you said is an amazing story. And I think it brings up the struggle for Purim. It brought up the struggle for many people for, Yom Kippur, what is Yom Kippur? And in everything we experienced this year, really a full year, what is the Chag? What is the day? What is life? All these kinds of questions. But I think that more importantly, it brings up this requirement that the Torah says that you sort of, when the Yontif comes, you have to control your emotion in a way to be besimcha, even though things around you are not. I think that's a tremendous, regardless of Purim and regardless of Corona, I think that's an important lesson because everybody in their life, I know we had a tremendous, I learned this in a tremendous way. It speaks a little bit to, what Shlomo Melech says, l'chol zman ve'es, that there's a time for everything. There's a time to be sad, time to be happy. And sometimes those come head to head because you want to be sad, but it's the ace to be besimcha, or you want to be besimcha, and it's the ace to be sad. And that's this struggle of constantly trying to find how you're supposed to be, and then really getting your emotions to that place. When I was in Darchei Torah, our beloved Rosh Hashiva's father was nifter one day, and that day was the day of the wedding of one of our friends who didn't have a father and mother, and the yeshiva was his father, it was his parents. And we were so psyched, so stoked for this wedding. And then this levaya and this funeral came on that day. And we were young, 18, 19-year-old boys. We didn't know how to do this. And people went to the Rosh Hashiva and they said, what in the world are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to go to this wedding tonight? And he said, you're going to the wedding for him. You're going for me. You're going to be besimcha. Now you're sad. Go back, take a shower, and go to the wedding. And you're happy. And you have to be able, and he taught us this lesson of l'chol zman ve'es, and there's a time and a place for everything. And to be able to switch. It was the most fascinating experience because it didn't feel like I was at a funeral at a wedding. There was a funeral. You got your emotions out. You dealt with them. And you went to a wedding and you dealt with those. So like tucking something away, and it requires you to be extremely in control and extremely emotionally healthy to do this. But it's sort of sometimes you see that the Torah and the Chagim are requiring you to do that. Purim is a good example because Purim comes like right in the middle of the workday. You're working right before, you're working right after. And then you have like this Purim, and it's not like a Shabbos, which you can hype yourself up for a Shabbos. Purim literally comes out of nowhere. A Yontif is more, where you have to prepare for it. And it's like Purim's like out of nowhere. So it's sort of the paradigm for this structure of having to be besimcha within your regular format and infrastructure, and that's hard. But I think that's what I'm taking from that story you told me, and this story. You have to be in control of your emotions.
This concept of l'chol zman ve'es, that everything has its time. We have to sort of be able to turn ourselves and face the thing that we are involved in, and then be present, throw ourselves into completely to what's happening. By Yaakov Avinu, when Yaakov Avinu was about to meet Esav, so it says he sent him a present. He davened Hashem. He got ready for war. Those are things that are size for each other. Those are big steers. If you're davening to Hashem, then you don't need to prepare for war. If you're preparing for war, and what's the diplomacy in sending presents for? Because the truth is that he realized that one of these things was, all of these things were necessary. They were all intertwined with each other. But when he did each one of them, he threw himself in to each one of them as this is the only thing that I need to do. So when I make my hishtadlus, it's my hishtadlus that I have to make. And when it's my bitachon, then it's my bitachon that I throw myself into completely. And it's all, you turn to the thing that you're dealing with and you throw yourself into that thing. I experienced this as myself, in a very personal way. that on the 18th anniversary of the shul, which every anniversary of the shul was always a very big deal. We made big kavana, but we made a very big deal over the anniversaries of the shul. The 18th anniversary, Chaim, it was like such a shock to everybody. We made it to 18, and we were thriving, and it was amazing. And we had just moved into the new shul, so it was really a huge deal. Harav Pesach Kron was coming for Shabbos. He was gonna talk and give shurim and speeches, and then Sunday night was a massive gala, and Friday night was a big dinner by somebody's house, and then Shabbos lunch was the entire community was invited for lunch, and Thursday afternoon, Grandma was niftaris, and
Your mother.
my mother, yeah, and she wasn't sick or anything, so it was a huge shock to everyone. And she was more of in the community. She
lived by us.
She lived by us, and she was very much a part of the community. Anytime you needed volunteers, Grandma was there, and she became very friendly with people. So it was a massive shock to the community. Levi wasn't until Sunday, so we were staying for Shabbos and then leaving on Motzei Shabbos. So the shilas were huge. We dance every Friday night. So I'm in Aninos, but on Shabbos, not in Aninos. So what do we do with dancing? What do we do with the whole Shabbos? So I spoke to Reb David Cohen and focused me halachically, but also focused me in what I needed to do, and that there is no avelos on Shabbos, and Shabbos is Shabbos, and for the community and all those factors. And it was a great education for the community also, because I had an opportunity. I wrote a letter before Shabbos explaining everything. The whole thing was stunning.
You didn't find the letter?
No, I didn't find the letter.
I would have loved to see it. Okay.
Yeah, but it was the most, I would have to say, the most amazing Shabbos in my life, because I had to turn toward Shabbos with complete and total focus and say, this is now Shabbos. And forget about the 18th anniversary of the shul and all that I could actually, on many levels, sort of push to the back. But Shabbos was in the front. And to focus and grab on to the Kedusha Shabbos was something incredible. I once heard from one of my students who was in the army here, and he was in the war in Gaza. And he said that for I think it was like 5 weeks or whatever, Shabbos wasn't really Shabbos while he was doing things. He said, but every Shabbos there was a couple of minutes where he wasn't doing anything, and it was Shabbos. And he said to me that those were the best Shabbos of his life, because he had to focus
and find Shabbos there.
Fascinating. And that's when you sit Shiva, that also. That you have to, when you're in your year of Avelos and all that, you have to find in that moment, you have to fully face and connect with that moment. You have to address that moment, and then find what's there in that moment. Whereas the rest of your life, you sort of, and that's a little bit of our problem, but that we sort of go through and we drift from issue to issue and from thing to thing, from yontif to yontif.
Yeah, and we just we let it happen over us.
All right, as opposed to us making it, and that's, certainly that's true of Shabbos. That Shabbos we slip into a certain mode of Shabbos, the way that we observe Shabbos, as opposed to addressing it, as opposed to stopping from before Shabbos and looking at it in the eyes and saying, what am I getting out of this Shabbos? What's going to be this Shabbos is Aliyah. Even this idea, this light. There should be light going on, something. But what am I going to get out of this Shabbos? And I think that being conscious is really that's really what comes out of this.
Right. Being intentional and conscious of what you're doing. Just one more story before we move on to Purim. That there was this mice about Rabbi Levin that he found out on Shabbos day that his daughter was niftaris, and he didn't cry. There's a story in our family, not my family, but in Adel's family, that's similar to that. The difference of those two stories, and the reason why I like the Rabbi Levin story, is because after Shabbos, he cried. And the end of the story is what's important. That somebody found out on Shabbos that their daughter died and they didn't cry, it's a kalta litbak, meaning then you're not possibly that you're not emotionally attached to it. Fine. But that you're emotionally attached enough after Shabbos to cry, but on Shabbos not, is the one of the greatest examples of this. I know it's a sad example, but it's the greatest example of being present where you are. And I think that's the...
So I'll tell you another story.
Okay. You're going to one-up me? Yeah.
No, no, that's not one-upping, but it just brings up a lot of issues, this discussion. When my father was sick, and he had a very short sickness. It was 11 weeks when he was diagnosed until he passed away. And he was, in his last 2 weeks, it was clear that he was leaving us. And we thought that it was going to be imminent, but it had schlepped out a little bit. And it was Shavuos. It was a 3-day yontif. It was Shabbos and then Sunday, Monday, Shavuos. And at that point, we just felt that I needed to be back with the family. We had a lot of little kids, and I needed to be back with the shul. And the whole family, it was my sisters and my mom and everybody, we made a decision that I should go right before Yontif, as I left the latest flight I could on Friday morning, and then come back right after Yontif. So it happens to be that he was nifter on Shabbos morning. My sisters were there in the hospital with him, and they ended up spending Shavuos 3 days really, because he was nifter early Shabbos morning. Spent those 3 days. Like I can't even imagine how difficult that must have been. But my uncle called, and those were the days where you still had answering machines. It wasn't voicemail. So Yaakov had gone out. We were in the middle of Ni'ilas HaChag. We made a big Ni'ilas HaChag, Shavuos, dancing, singing, geschmack. And Yaakov went out to the bathroom. And as he went out, he heard the message.
This is in the old shul,
in the old shul,
right?
Yeah. So he went out past the machine. He heard my uncle leaving the message that make sure you get on the plane because your dad passed away. And when he came back in, I could see in his face, and I knew what happened. But it was still Yontif. Well, it wasn't much of Yontif left, but it was still Yontif, and we were in the middle of Ni'ilas HaChag. So I said, what do I have to do? I mean, right now, what's in front of me is Ni'ilas HaChag. There's nothing I can do. I'm not in Aninas yet. I mean, it's still Yontif. So I plugged away, finished, and then as soon as Yontif was over, I collapsed. I mean, it was just I couldn't. Everything hit me, and I wouldn't let it hit me until that moment. And I remember how much strength it took. It was. I don't even know where I found it from, and it's nothing that I could have said before, and that I'm going to do this when this happens. It's just, it just sort of happened that way. But I think that's what
these stories bring out the requirement. But do you not believe that this is a requirement on every Jew every Shabbos?
Every Jew every Shabbos.
You go into Shabbos, it's the worst 20 minutes of your week is right then. And then you have to go into Menucha. What is Menucha? I just almost killed my wife. And then it's like literally the worst. What am I supposed to... Menucha.
Right.
And you have to... And that's what it takes. You have to relax yourself. You have to get into it. You have to focus. Menucha sanefesh. You have to focus on your requirement. But I think we have to answer that question for every Shabbos, every day, every Chag. And I want to do that now for Purim here so that we can know what is Purim and what is the essence and how can we do that. We're going to put that in our bag so we can experience that no matter where we are is the idea. But that's what this is.
So I'll tell you my take. Sort of boiled down and whittled down to one, really to one small thought.
Your one-liner for Purim?
It's a one-liner for Purim. We'll develop the one-liner.
That's the idea. Is you should get it to a one-liner for, and then just have that, and all of your divrei Torah and all of your learning can simmer down to that and get into that, and you can experience Yantif on that level. Each time could be different. Each year can be different. But that you should have a theme, I think is the best word, a theme running in your system.
So I think Purim, there are two themes. I think the one is, and I'm not going to deal with so much, is Lech Knos Kol Yehudim, is when Esther turns to Mordechai and says, "Go get them all together. Get them all together. Let's daven, and then we'll take it from there." Because that's what we're missing. We're missing a togetherness. We're missing a sense of caring about each other. We're missing a sense of connection to each other. And we see how that played out. And we see that all the mitzvahs of Purim have to do with that. It's all about Lech Knos Kol Yehudim. And that, I think, is an easy one to develop for people to develop.
That's what Haman saw in us as well. He saw an Amafuzar.
He
saw that we weren't together. We weren't functioning as a unit.
That's right. And that we were vulnerable at that moment because we weren't functioning as a unit. So I think that there's so much that's going on now that's spreading us apart and that's ripping us at our cores, that I think that if you stop on Purim and you just say, how can I be part of a solution? Not how can I change this, because you're a fool if you think you could change it. But you can be part of the solution. You and then the next person next to you and the next person next to you, so then that can bring about a solution. There's nothing global really for us to do, but there is a lot to do within ourselves.
There's nothing really physical either, because a lot of people are restricted and can't be Kados Kol Yehudim.
Right.
But it's a mindset, it's a feeling. We talk about this a lot in our podcasts, but I think this Nakuda always, it goes off in my head when you say this, that the sinna, the hatred,
right?
Every Klal Yisrael thrives. Am Yisrael thrives on having different, this is what you were saying last week, but having different ideas and different sheets and different opinions. We need to have everyone. What we don't need is the hatred for someone else's. And we can disagree. That's not the point. This is not a lovey kumbaya moment, as you say. And that's not me. But that's not the point. The point is I disagree with you, and I can find a place in my heart where that doesn't offend me and it doesn't hurt me, and therefore I'm not mad at you. And I need to work on sinna needs to get taken away. And you read it in the posts, you read it in the articles, and there are certain people, I don't know if you want to shout them out, but there are certain people who know how to argue without the sinna. And I like that and I appreciate that. But that's sort of the antidote here that we can work on with not dealing with it. But that's sort of the thing with Lech Kanos is ask yourself that question. Are you part of this klal? Are you part of this Am Yisrael? And you view everybody as an arm, as a leg, as part of this this body of Am Yisrael. I think that's an important thing we can work on.
100%. And I think that's kind of work that we can do as we're sitting on our sudas, as we're reading the Megillah, and we read those words, Lech Knos Kol Yehudim. I think there's a lot to be done there. But I want to focus on something else. The thing I want to focus on is that, and this is Parsha of things, but it's just good to hear it brought up again and then to find it inside of ourselves. One of the clear themes of Purim is the concept of Hester Panim, the concept of God being concealed and being behind the curtain, and it's you could say, give it over in the story, like you could say it quick. The whole story, the name Esther, right? The very name of the heroine of the story is Hester, is last year to hide. The whole story was a miracle that took place within nature, which means that it was a nes nistar. It was a hidden miracle. It wasn't a nes nigla. There wasn't a moment you could point
to anywhere and say.
There's no Cecil B. DeMille moment, as I say. Right? Like there's no moment you could say, wow.
A lot of, as I say, is this going to be, besides just the breaking the matzah, there's a lot here. Yeah. Now it's on record.
Right. Now you can't forget it.
Yeah, exactly. After we get a whole year of podcasts, we'll have all your...
Right. There's no moment that you can look at and say, that's the turning point. Yet every single moment... There is
God, Zekeli. It's much harder.
But every moment was a turning point. But I think that one of the really, really fundamental things is that you open up the Megillah, and what you don't find is you don't find the name of God. And unfortunately, all of the secularists say that the reason you don't find the name of God in the Megillah is because it has nothing to do with God. It was a story of, the Arabian Nights. I remember a rabbi next door to us used to say that it was a story straight out of the Arabian Nights. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves or whatever. And it's nothing like that. There's a very, very important understanding and teaching as to why God's name is not in the Megillah, when in truth, his name is all over the Megillah. There are many psukim that are the first letter of the four words that run within the pasuk. There's Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. There are quite a few psukim like that in the Megillah. There's also,
but that doesn't speak to the nigla, to the revealed part of God. It speaks to the hidden, to the Hester. Because you can only find it through this acronym and through
100%. And the word Hamelech. So Chazal tell us that the word Hamelech is not referring to Achashverosh. When it says Hamelech, it's referring to the Melech, to our king, to God. So God's name is really all over the Megillah. The roots of all of this go back to the Shabbos before Purim, which is Parsha Zachor, this coming Shabbos, where we talk about Amalek. And Amalek, we say, is Bechinas Safek, right? That their very essence is Safek, is doubt. And what doubt means is that when you look at things, you don't see something special in it, you just look at the surface, which is really the same as cynicism, but I'm not going to get to it now. But it's really looking at something and denuding it of its specialty, of its specialness, and just seeing the surface of it. There's a beautiful medrash that says that when the Amalekites came to the desert, what they found was that they found there were the orlas, from the bris milah. They found a pile of orla, and they took the orlas and they threw them up klapi shmaya, which is such a weird image.
Yes.
It's like, a pile of leaves, and you run through a pile of leaves. It's
you know what an orla is, right?
it is a crazy image. How could they do that? So the answer is that because what they saw the remnants of a surgery. At best, they saw an act of barbarism because they couldn't see anything special in the teva, in something that was in they couldn't see something in the world that represented something. All they saw was the teva of it, the nature of it is just an orla. That's all. They didn't see that this was an ice bris kodesh. They didn't see that this was something, that there was something special behind this. And that's why when we talk about Amalek, we talk about asher karcha b'derech. Just what happened?
What happened, right?
Because to them, it's all coincidence. It all just happened. And that's what Haman was about also. By Haman, he couldn't see anything. He couldn't see anything special. He couldn't see anything. He couldn't make connections between things. He couldn't read behind a maven davar, mitar davar.
He couldn't see the storyline of what was happening in front of him, what Esther was doing, and what her role was. He couldn't. Right.
Everybody around him could see it. And they said, if you're some Zera Yehudim, then you have to worry because this is what all of this is meaning now. And no, he couldn't see a thing. When Haman looked at it, all Haman saw was teva, was nature. All he saw was just the surface, was just regular. Mordechai looked at it, and he understood that there was something very deep here. There was a message that was being sent to him. God left his name out of the Megillah. His name was left out of the Megillah, so that we now have a choice. You can either see the world like Amalek, or you can see the world like Mordechai. You can either look at things like Haman did and just see a story, nothing more than a story. Or you can look at that story and you can see Hamelech embedded in the story. You can see Yud Ke Vav Ke embedded in the story. You can tell a story in two ways. You can tell a story as a coincidental thing, or you can tell a story that you're seeing in everything the Yad Hashem, and you're seeing the wow, it's so serendipitous. It's like, wow, it's amazing. Look at all the things that are happening here. One of your siblings, which we won't say a name right now, but one of your siblings, when they tell over what, going to the supermarket and finding something that they were looking for, they tell it over as if the Rebbeinu Shalom split the sea before them and did an incredible miracle, because they see the Yad Hashem in every single thing that happens, and they speak that way. It's like, I went.
Well, I know who it's not.
So it's like I went, and you're not going to believe what. And then you're trying to think to yourself, wow, this is going to be some Pesach Kron story. This is going to be amazing. And there's nothing there, but there's everything there. Because they're not seeing anything as teva, They're not seeing anything as natural. They're recognizing the Yad Hashem in it. You can tell over the Corona story as
with or without
without
right?
God. That's right. You can either have Hashem embedded in every single line, in every single page, or you can tell the story over as just mikra, as something kol asher karahu, as Haman said, just tell over everything that happened to him and not see anything special there. And I feel, when we say the Shema, there's a reason why we cover our eyes. So if you ask most children, why do you cover your eyes? They'll tell you because we have to concentrate on the Shema, which is not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's not the exclusive reason. One of the reasons the rabbis explained that we cover our eyes is that we put ourselves in Hester Panim. We put ourselves in darkness.
And what do we say in darkness?
Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And that's what we sort of gotta try to find, like I was saying before, confront Purim, face it, look at it in the face and say, Purim, what do you got to say to me? So I look around like Mordechai did. The world is collapsing. For Mordechai, the world was collapsing. The Beis HaMikdash wasn't being rebuilt. The Jews were assimilating. He was losing them. They were, I was saying to you earlier, the most incredible image you have to think of what happened when Achashverosh came out in the Big Day Kahuna. He comes out in the Big Day Kahuna and he's, some fat drunk and he's drinking out of the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash. Yeah. So I gave him mashal. I said, imagine you're sitting at a fashion show and somebody comes out with a vest and the announcer says, so-and-so is displaying the newest fashions from Europe, a vest made out of leather, special leather. It was leather that's made of scrolls that were collected from the Jewish people in the 1940s. And you look at it and you see, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor, you see it's a Torah that was turned into a vest. And imagine seeing this, and you know that it came from the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, and you're looking at this, and you say nothing. You say nothing. You don't write a letter to the editor. You don't go over to the organizer and say I'm terribly offended by it. You say nothing. The best you could say is, could you pass the wine, please?
The kosher wine.
The kosher wine. That's it. As long as I had kosher wine, I was okay.
Because again, that's the same theme. They only saw it's kosher.
Shtiya kedas. Everything was where it's supposed to be. They didn't look behind it. What's the message going on here?
Did you ever see that? There was recently in the last 5 years, there was this H&M put out a scarf that looked like a tallis. Do you see that?
No.
And when you say that, it invokes that image of like, it was a tallis as a scarf for men and women. It was like a weird thing. But again, I don't know if I did the wrong thing. I didn't let myself get worked up over it. Maybe that was wrong. But it was a similar image where like, yeah, he did have that. You saw a model wearing a tallis. It had like tzitzis on it and like stripes. It's a fascinating image when you say that image of the Sefer Torah is similar.
Right. Because that's what we were holding. We were so totally cold and so totally not, not connected in to what was going on around us. It was as dark as it could be for Mordechai. Every Jew. Imagine what Mordechai felt like when he saw all the Jews. Haman walks out with the getchka on his chest and all the Jews drop to the ground. And he's the lone voice of sanity and rationality. And he's standing there and watching his people dissolve like that. Imagine what must have been going on in the mind of Mordechai. It was as black and dark as it could possibly be. Everybody around him was sick with corona.
Yeah.
Everybody around him. And he's looking at this.
Worse than corona, meaning it was a cholei hanefesh. It was much worse. It was fascinating.
And all he sees is his avodah and what he has to do to lift up the Jews. And
once you say the theme, so I was reading the Sefer, the book I took from Ramesh Shapiro, and he asked a great question. He said, Haman, he says, who people poor? And it fell out on what day? It fell out on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu died. But he didn't know that it was also the day Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So Moshe asked a great question. What happened first? He was born, and then he died. So what trumps all is the second thing that happened. So really Haman was right. But Rashi says there that the birth of Moshe is mechaper on his death. Fine. And then Ramosha launches into a very Ramosha Shapiro-esque idea. But now that you have this theme, I look at that and I had an answer. And I said, because Haman made a choice. Do you want to see death or do you want to see life? Do you want to see God? Do you want to see Moshe? Do you want to see what he did? Or do you want to see what he didn't and how he died and how he can't anymore? And do you want to see void of Kedusha? And he's made that choice to look at life that way. So it's who lo hayadeh made a choice not to know. Once you have a theme, it's tremendous what you can create from that you start seeing everything. Right. Besides the things you see in your own life, which I have tons of examples, but just in the story itself, you start seeing these things.
Right. And that's
Achashverosh. Was Achashverosh a stupid king or a smart king? Right. When we were learning Megillah, we had this trying to prove it from the words, but now you can sort of say he was under the influence maybe of a Haman, where he was stupid in the sense that he was smart and chose certain ways to think. Right. And he chose to look at things a certain way, and wasn't right. Not to see God is not the right thing, right?
And that's what I see Purim as. Purim is the day to make a choice. How am I going to look at the world? How am I going to look at my condition right now? Am I going to look at my condition as saying this is all mikra? It's devoid of God? Keli lama zavtani? Or am I going to look at it and say the Rebbeinu Shalom is right here with me, and that in every single thing, the old thank you Hashem, right? Thank you Hashem for my family. Thank you Hashem for being in Eretz Yisrael. Thank you Hashem.
You like that minhag that we do because so on Shabbos, this is a little bit of around the Shabbos table just to give you a glimpse that my kids are in love with it, and it's taken off. It's taken a mind of its own. But we sing thank you Hashem, thank you Hashem, and then we go, thank you, Hashem, and we point to somebody, and really my kids are in charge, and they point to somebody, and you have to say something you're thankful for. And it gets so specific, because everybody wants to be a little happy, so you get so specific, but what it teaches you is that there's layers and layers and layers of things to say thank you for, and you could be thank you macro or micro, and you can choose, and you can say that, and it's interesting. Sometimes we get the funny ones, but every once in a while, the kids say something that blows you away, like, wow, that's what you were thankful. And it teaches you that consciousness of that there's layers and so specific you can be grateful for. That's the thank you Hashem of Purim. That
right now I'm in love with that minhag, and I hope that it continues as long as the kids keep saying thank you for Bubby and Zadie. Right, exactly. When they change that, then I think I'm going to have a problem. but that's...
My 2-year-old, Laurie, still says, thank you, Hashem. She goes, for Laurie. So yeah. There's room to grow on that one.
Right. So I think that's, you sort of got to stare down Purim, and you got to say, look, even if I'm sitting in a Suda alone, I have so much to do at that Suda to talk about.
Where is God? A great question to ask yourself is, where is God that I currently am not seeing him?
That's right.
Do I not see him in my job? Do I not see him in my learning? Do I not see him in my davening, in my relationship with my kids, relationship with myself, in my productivity? Do I not see God there?
In what's going on around me in the world, what's going on around me politically, what's going on around me with world health? Am I forgetting to see God in this? Am I looking at the world like Haman, or am I looking at this world like Mordechai? And that's the Megillah. The Megillah is the test. Here's a Megillah. It reads two ways. There's a Tam Elyon and a Tam Tachton. You can read it two ways. How are you going to read this?
That's awesome.
And that's my Purim. I can't wait for Purim, because I can't wait to put that into practice, which I have to say that this, I try to do this every year, but I just can't wait now. Again, because all the trappings are taken away from us. There's not 50 people, and there's not hundreds of people, and there's not all the shtick around it. It's just us. And look, we saw it last year on Pesach. You pull away all the shtick and all the trappings.
Right, we still went till 2:00,
and it was
right?
And
that was just the proof that it exists. It's inherent.
You just got to stare it down, look it in the eyes, and say, what do you mean to me?
Okay, before we, terrific. And before we finish here, I just want to, I ask you to prepare your top 3, or you can go with 1 or 2, but your top 3 Purim costumes. It was always the minhag in La Jolla to have extravagant, to say the least, Purim costumes. And so it's about you. What were your top three?
So I don't know
Say
if I
your
can
first
get it to
one,
three.
and then I'll give one.
So in many different categories, I've got many different ones that I loved. I loved Elvis.
Why did you love it?
It was so crazy, and I made a song, an Elvis song, for that Purim. I loved. What do I love about it? I loved the craziness of it, and the Roshim that it made. The Roshim that it made, of that. You know what? We have to give ourselves up to the simcha, to the joy, to the moment. I mean, costumes for me is a very, very important thing. I feel it's an important, the hashkaf of it is an important part of everything we talked about tonight, because the whole concept of a costume is that you have to look behind the mask. And that's really what Purim is. Purim is looking behind the mask, looking behind the hester, looking behind the veil, and being able to see God behind the veil. And that's just represented by this little stupidity called the costume. But
there was an avoda for you when we went to Buffalo Breath to rent the costumes. It was Hareini Muchan. It was Mizuman.
It was an avoda. It was
cool
because it felt to me like
and it should be. But I'm surprised that you felt that it was part. Yeah.
So another crazy one was the hula skirt. Mit coconuts.
I remember that.
That was a crazy one.
So mine were the Fred Flintstone Purim.
Oh yeah,
it was in Sheila's, and I think it was also a Friday.
It's a Friday Purim.
It was also Friday Purim.
That's right.
And it was in the restaurant upstairs.
Yeah,
I remember that clearly. I don't know why. I don't know. I think I remember the song. I think you sang a Beatles song. Let me hold your hand.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time since then I ever said that. So,
right.
So there you go, Yona. I also have some facts in here. And then I remember the sumo wrestler.
Right.
I remember you overheating in that, but it was so funny. This massive, you stuffed it with cotton.
The cotton or stockings or something.
There was something in there. Okay. And the hair, you had like netting and with a Chinese thing in hair coming out. And then the tights, the king. I remember the tights. I think it came with a king costume, but I remember the tights.
It was a king costume, yeah. Prince Charming, actually.
Okay, so I remember the tights, but those were like stuck in my memory. But
you weren't there for the motorcycle,
right? These were ones I think I was there for. But yeah, of course, the motorcycle.
The Harley, dressed up as a Harley guy, and I came into the Suda on the back of a motorcycle.
Of a Harley,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of crazy stuff on Purim, but again, it was infectious, and it
right. Well, as you saw, as years went by, other people were doing it as well,
right.
And like serious costumes, but not just for fun. I hope that it was infused that message as well, of the importance. So
beautiful. Wish everybody a Freilichen Purim, and a Freilichen Purim. Not that you should have fun, but that you should find the meaning of Purim, find the essence of Purim, and grab onto that and bring that into your life, and just feel a sense of simcha, and that you can live with day after day after Purim.
Awesome. You can always reach us at intentionaljew@gmail.com. You can reach myself and the rabbi for any questions, anything you need. Also, this video is up on YouTube, so for those of you watching on YouTube, drop a comment, a like, subscribe if you aren't subscribed. That helps us get this out to more people and help them hear me more, because that's the most important part here. But drop a comment. It helps with YouTube. So be part of this and be part of what we're doing here, and hopefully we can bring you a little bit of meaning. Just try to do that, and I'll say yours, pass the chalent. And have a great Shabbos, and I hope this helps in your prep for Purim, to see God in everything.
Freilichen Purim.
And remember, you rock.